And he's got the matchup. Romao is on Bant Golos.
Yeah, this has to be the dream matchup, right? If you submit mono red Cavalcade and you're told, all right, you have a win in it. What do you want to play against? It has to be the Bant Golos deck. And this is the reason why Lee chose to bring this deck. And I was actually a little bit surprised that he was the only one that chose to play the mono red Cavalcade deck. Because if you do want to beat this Bant Golos deck, I think this is possibly one of the best decks out there to beat it.
Yeah, it's interesting because Lee based it based on his predicted day 2 metagame, where everybody else had to face the entire field, and they maybe felt like, well, I don't want to slog through a bunch of, food decks or whatever. All right, here we go. Fervent Champion to kick things off for Shi Tian. A nice opener here, though, for Romao. He's got the Once Upon a Time, but the Growth Spiral already ready to go, and it's going to cost him no damage. He sees Agent of Treachery, probably a little too long down the line for that one, but a Field of the Dead.
Yeah. And a couple of key things for Carlos that's really great for him. He won the die roll, right? He went first. Secondly, he has that Growth Spiral. I feel like every opener that you have where you have the ability to play that turn 2 Growth Spiral completely swings the tempo back in your favor, because of course this deck has lots of really expensive clunky cards, but once you get it going, it's really hard to stop, because once you get those 7 lands in play with Field of the Dead, that's it. You just start generating a steady supply of zombie tokens.
Now we're going to see some interesting stuff here from Lee. Generally speaking, his deck can get off to a quick start and chip away at your life total, get you down to, say, 10, 9, 8, somewhere in that range, before you really get anything going. Then he can start unleashing the true fireworks with his Cavalcade of Calamity plus Torbrand. Now, the interesting part, of course, here is that he's going to have to find them with these light up the stages, but I'll tell you what, a Runaway Steamkin, that'll certainly help.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic draw here from Carlos Romao.
Seriously.
Growth Spiral into Beanstalk Giant, and next turn he's just going to have access to Realm Cloak Giant. Not only that, because he drew so many ramp options, he's going to start being able to pump out gigantic Hydroid Krasis. He's going to be able to put, multiple Hydroid Krasi for 4, which means he's going to gain 2 life and have huge bodies in play.
He goes and gets a Plains that gives him double white needed for cast off, which is the adventure half of Realm Cloak Giant. So he has the ability to do that as well. And that might give Shi Tian a little bit of pause. He's got the Scorch Spitter here, and he can run in for some damage, but, you don't necessarily want to just get 3 for 1. That is a way you can lose, especially given that he does have 3 extra lands in hand. That said, this game is really going to come down to light up the stage here for Shi Tian's perspective, because he needs to find stuff with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, Scorch Spitter hits the battlefield. That ups the damage output by 1 more, thanks to the Runaway Steamkin. Down to 15 falls Carlos Romao. But here's light up the stage number 1. What does he see? Wow, another Runaway Steamkin and a Torbrand.
And he really doesn't necessarily want to put more creatures on the battlefield. He wants to find some spells. Cards like Cavalcade of Calamity would be nice. Of course, those creatures that he revealed with Light Up the Stage, he can still cast next turn. And very likely that Carlos is going to want to fire off that Realm Cloak Giant.
It's kind of rough here for Lee as well, because his deck is vastly primarily made up of creatures. We're actually getting a chance to see a few of the only non-creature spells in his deck. He kind of has to commit to the board. He doesn't really have a choice. In fact, he's going to fire off the other light up the stage, and he sees Mountain and another Torbrand.
Yeah, and that was not great. He's only going to be really able to play one of those cards. Oh, excuse me. He's going to be able to play Runaway Steamkin, but again, next turn, Carlos is going to slam the cast off here, play out a Guildgate, and then,
comes the giant hand.
There it is. Boom, I'll take all those creatures. And he's sitting at a comfortable 15 life here, and Lee has 2 mountains in hand.
2 copies of Hydroid Krasis for Carlos Romao gives him a long-term insurance plan as well. And yeah, Torbrand is very powerful, especially in combination with the cards in Lee's deck. But it may be too late here. This is a Krasis for 4. Okay. 2 lands off the top, Paul. Maybe that's not quite exactly what he wanted.
Well, yeah, but then we're going to see a zombie here.
Oh, yeah.
Keep in mind, we have the Beanstalk Giant and Realm Cloak Giant, a pair of gigantic creatures that will also get in the way. And I think this is basically over here from here on out.
Shi Tian with 4 mountains in hand somehow.
And that's the thing about this Bant Golos deck. When the Bant Golos deck gets kind of its better draws where you do have that Growth Spiral into ramp, it doesn't matter what your opponents are trying to do, really. You can really just kind of handle everything.
That's right, and it's also very difficult to attack, right? It's like you're just playing lands and playing ramp spells. What are you going to do? And the answer is not a whole heck of a lot. for Shi Tian. He says, land, go, Castle Embereth. And now we're going to start seeing the beatdown here. Hydroid Krasis is going to get in. That Fabled Passage can make a bunch of zombies. Realm Cloak Giant as a 7/7 Vigilance is really not something that Shi Tian is built to deal with. I think this one's in the books.
Oh, yeah.
3 mountains in hand.
Not going to get it done.
The 10th Street Dodger off the top of the library. Boy, it's just sort of insult to injury, though. Can get in for a few damage here. What, like 3, but
4 with the Castle Embereth, I guess.
yeah. Not enough.
Not even close.
Quick count here from Romao, but he's got some big attacks coming back the other direction.
So this is nearly
almost
a
lethal.
attack,
Yeah, it's for 15.
Then Carlos can just run out a giant Hydroid Krasis here to further pad his life total here.
The Insurance Krasis.
Yeah.
There's a Fabled Passage for 2 additional zombies as well. And this one is well and truly in the books. Game number 1 is going to go to Carlos Romao and Shi Tian facing a very tough situation here. Now, he's not 100% eliminated from competition if he loses here, but things kind of get complicated based on some other matches, so we're going to kind of keep that on the back burner for now. We'll explain it when those moments come up, but for now, the focus here, of course, even if you're still in Lee's seat, is win and in. He needs to win these next 2 games.
Yeah, Cavalcade of Calamities is huge. It's really, really important to draw here because if you do draw Cavalcade of Calamities, you don't need to necessarily overextend. Most of the creatures in your deck have haste, which means that, you know, even if Carlos Romao did fire off something like a Time Wipe or the Cast Off, he would still be able to refill. But, you know, that was one of those hands where Lee really had no other way to play his hand. He just needed to play everything and just kind of hope that Carlos didn't have the sweeper.
Yeah, you know, Lee's deck has what looks like a combo finish when you combine Torbrand and Cavalcade of Calamity with some small creatures. But, yeah, he's going to have to draw a little better to get to that point. In the meantime, Carlos has brought in 3 copies of Devout Decree and 2 copies of Night of Autumn, both excellent additions to this deck.
Huge, huge.
He's taken out some of the slower elements, like Agent of Treachery.
And we haven't seen necessarily all the Bant Golos lists have this, but Carlos does have access to Oko, Thief of Crowns. A decent way to maybe shut down Torbrand. On top of that, just if you do happen to stabilize, it is a steady source of gaining life. Devout Decree is also really important because it does allow Carlos to have an additional answer to Tybalt, Rakish Instigator, as that anti-life gain clause is going to be very relevant here, given that Carlos has Oko, Thief of Crowns, Night of Autumn, and Hydroid Krasis.
Carlos putting the finishing touches on his sideboard.
Looking
like, yeah, he doesn't want the Fertile Footsteps Beanstalk Giant.
Yeah, he just wants to maximize on the interaction. Teferi isn't even great, but he just wants to absolutely maximize on all the interaction and survive until he can cast his sweepers.
So the big question is, does he have a Growth Spiral? The answer is yes, but no lands. So he's going to have to ship that one back. Here's a Growth Spiral, and he can't cast it on 2, but he can on 3.
Yeah, certainly going to keep this hand. Probably has to ship one of the fielded defense
he
back.
mulliganed it.
Wow.
I'm surprised,
He's
too.
going to 5.
Huh.
Maybe he's really looking for a very specific subset of cards, knowing that the matchup is so bad on the draw, that he just goes, look, if I don't have Devout Decree or Arboreal Grazer, maybe I'm just supposed to mulligan.
So
that's the only thing that makes
5,
sense.
But this thing's a stinker, too. Look at this. He's going to have 4 lands and a Krasis.
Yeah. Lee's hand isn't the fastest. He doesn't have a 1-drop in his hand, but you know, he will be able to run out that turn 2 Runaway Steamkin. If he draws land number 3, he does have access to Legion War Boss. And even if he doesn't, very likely to find a land off the light up the stage in his hand.
There's a Devout Decree off the top of the library, so a sideboard card for Romao. And he was going to play Temple of Malady to try to get that Scribe, but now he's like, ugh, I might need the Devout Decree a little sooner. Going to run out green-white.
Untap land?
Yikes. Okay, here's the Steamkin. All right, now he did not end up finding land number 3 just yet, but as you mentioned, Light Up the Stage is still at the ready. So he gets to get in here for 3. Bang, bang.
Really wants a land here.
There you go.
Oh yeah, this is perfect. This is the ideal start here now for Lee. Meanwhile, Carlos with the mulligan here. And
beautiful.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
Look at this start from Shi Tian. He uses the runaway Steamkin to power out Tibalt and add another creature to the board. And this game is just about over.
Yeah, he's got the Devout Decree on the runaway Steamkin, I guess. But the next turn, Lee will be able to follow this up with Land Legion War Boss. Carlos is still 2 turns away from being able to cast a sweeper. And that's not even, that's excluding the fact that he doesn't even have one in his hand.
Right. Whew, Shi Tian putting on a show. And Carlos is going to go ahead and put the land on the bottom. Oh, a Torbrand off the top of the library, and he can play it too.
Okay, how much damage is that? Let's see, we got the Fervent Champion, we got the Scorch Spitter. The attack also is an additional trigger, so that's 3, 6, 9, 12 damage if you play Torbrand. Wow.
Well done, Shi Tian. Lee's taking a look at the deck list here to make sure that he's not going to get swept next turn. But he's not.
Right, that would just be impossible. There is no 4-mana sweeper that he could play.
Exactly.
And Carlos Romao is not playing something like a Deafening Clarion. Even if he did, Torbrand would survive.
I was going to say, so I heard you like triggers, but we're not even going to get to see them because Carlos Romao is going to pack it in as Torbrand was the finisher, and we're going to get a game 3 here. Oh, baby, this is playing for top 8. This is what it's all about. Big, big pressure on both players. The good news for Carlos, he gets to be on the play this time.
Yeah, he gets to be on the play, which is huge, huge, huge.
Wow, that game was a disaster for him,
right?
though.
But we just saw how swingy it could be both ways, right? If Carlos does get that ideal start with Growth Spiral or Grazer into Oko or Circuitous Route, he can stabilize pretty quickly. But if he doesn't, if his hand is a little bit clunky, which happens often with this deck. I mean, look at the deck. You have a bunch of Hydroid Craci, you have Realm Cloak Giants, Kenriths, and Goloses. All those cards are very, very expensive. You need to find that right mix of cards. And if you don't find it, I mean, Lee's deck's just going to run you over.
That's right. Whew. Shi Tian really putting on a show there in game number 2, showing off the raw power of this deck. We still haven't even seen a Cavalcade from him yet. Didn't need it.
And we've seen a lot of players. We've seen Ken Yukihiro being rewarded because of all the lack of spot removal in this format. A lot of people changing around their deck configuration because, you know, you don't want a deck with a ton of removal spells against Golos. And also, there's just not a lot of pure control decks that are viable in this format right now because of Field of the Dead. There's not a lot of good answers. Esper Control was a deck that was all over the place in previous Standard, and now you don't see it because you just don't have an answer for that land, and if you feel like you have a very poor matchup against Golos, you just shouldn't bring it to the tournament. As a result, all these decks with a bunch of creatures relying very heavily on cards like Embercleave have risen and gone up in stock a lot.
Yeah, and we saw that here. I mean, there's 2 players that can act as a good litmus test if you're a control player, and if they don't bring a control deck to a tournament, you shouldn't either. And they're both here, Greg Orange and Shoti Asoka.
Yep.
And they're both like, nah, dude, I'm not playing against Field of the Dead all day.
Yeah.
And yeah, that tells you that at least in the current iteration of Standard, control is not where you want to be.
Right.
Now, we do see the Growth Spiral here, but this is another very slow hand, all tap lands here effectively for Romao. So Temple, Plains, oof.
That is
an untapped land.
He does need the lands, but
Yep.
Carlos needs to string together a couple of good draws here.
You can see he's stressing it. Tin Street Dodger hits the battlefield here for Lee. He cracks in for just the 1 point of damage. Another Temple, and he sees another Temple, although this one's a Temple Garden.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he needs that one. I guess he just really wants to make sure he can hit land number 5, but he might also, the thing is it's so likely for you to find land at this point anyways, you might want to just bottom a land because you're highly likely to find one and find interaction.
Mm-hmm. Now it's on Lee, and he has to decide what he wants to do. He's got the Dodger. He could play Cavalcade. He could play even a Rimrock Knight or a Runaway Steamkin, and he's going to go for the Steamkin. Doesn't do much here, just a 1/1, but we can see last game just how good that card could be. Now, this is key. It's Growth Spiral on 2 mana, but it will leave him with 4 by the time he's said and done. And if he wants to play Fabled Passage, he could even fire off the Once Upon a Time here.
And that's why he played out the Fabled Passage, so that he can fetch a forest, cast Once Upon a Time, find something. Although I can't imagine him playing something other than Golos or Kenrith.
Yeah. Boy, he really doesn't want to see Tybalt here, and that's exactly what Shi Tian has. Remember, one of the ways that that Carlos can run away with this is with Kenrith the Return King, 2 and a white, gain 5 life. That is absolutely massive when you can untap and do it 2 or even 3 times and just simply outrace what's going on here. But that looks like it's going to be too slow this time, especially given that he's going to have to deal with Tybalt in the meantime.
Yeah, I love playing out Tybalt as opposed to some of the other options here because Carlos does have 4 lands in play. That means if he plays an untapped land, boom, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to potentially Time Wipe or a Realm Cloak Giant that Carlos could play. So it makes a lot of sense to run out the Planeswalker that even if your opponent does play a sweeper, you can follow that up with Legion Warboss plus an additional token from that Tybalt.
And you can see the double Cavalcade of Calamity in hand working very well with Legion Warboss. Things could get ugly for Carlos Romao if he's not able to get on the board quickly. Now there's Devout Decree. Now that gets interesting. He has a Grazer as well that he can play as a blocker. He's not going to be able to get the extra land at this point, but hey, anything works. Now he's just going to go for Golos, Tireless Pilgrim.
Probably getting a Field of the Dead here. As with land number 6, basically any land that he draws will give him access to blockers. He doesn't have Guild Gates in play to get the Plaza of Harmony. You need 2 in play to be able to gain the 3 life.
Oh boy, this is just a timing thing for Romao. He has the pieces that he needs to stabilize the board. He can make a bunch of zombies. That'll take care of the blockers. He can Devout Decree away Tybalt, and he can gain a bunch of life with Kenrith. The question is, does he have the time? Because those Calamity hits add up fast.
Really interesting here. Now, Shi Tian also has that Rimrock Knight, and there's a pretty solid chance that Carlos Romao chooses to block the Runaway Steamkin with the Golos, and Lee will have the Rimrock Knight to pump the Runaway Steamkin to get that Golos off the battlefield.
Shi Tian looking at casting a Tin Street Dodger to try to pile on as much damage as possible. Or does he need to use that Knight to try to take down Golos if Carlos Romao goes for the block? This is the question that Shi Tian has to answer. And as he's decided maximum aggression, he's going to go for the Dodger.
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to run out Cavalcade here as well with the mana from the Runaway Steamkin.
Woo!
And he'll have...
I guess that does give him the Rimrock Knight.
He'll have one mana...
Boulder Rush.
Right, he'll have 1 mana left over to either go for Boulder Rush or make one of the Tin Street Dodgers unblockable.
Yeah.
He could just choose to Boulder Rush the Runaway Steamkin and just still offer that trade if he wants.
Sure. I mean, it's putting your hand face up, but it's like not a great option here for Romao either way.
This is so much damage.
Trigger, 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 boom, boom, boom. And Carlos Romao's life total is plummeting. He's all the way down to 7. This forces the Golos block.
And he's going to go down to 4 here.
I don't see how Romao can get out in only 1 turn cycle.
Right. Lee can, even if Lee makes another Devil here, if both the Devils die, Carlos is going to go down to 2, and then any haste creature still wins the game.
Shi Tian applying maximum pressure to Carlos Romao with everything on the line.
This
is for top 8, and I can't see a way out for Carlos.
Carlos needed to have a sweeper, and even if he did, he still would have been enough. Actually, if he found a sweeper, he could have run out the Arboreal Grazer. But that's still the double Cavalcade of Calamity would still trigger off the Legion Warboss, and that still would have been lethal. So,
wow.
Yeah, I think this is it.
The metagame call from Shi Tian is going to pay off. He got the exact matchup that he expected here in day 2. This is why he's the only mono red player in the field, and he's into the top 8.
Wow.
Congratulations to Shi Tian.
Shi Tian. Oh my goodness. The only mono red player.
Look at him. He is absolutely overcome with emotion after making yet another top 8 on what is already a Hall of Fame career for Shi Tian.
You can see how much this means to him. He's already had so much success at the tabletop level.
Incredible stuff beating, well, one of the tougher opponents in the field, and this is not a field full of weak players. That is Carlos Romao, who's going to pick up his third loss here. We'll see what that means for him in just a little bit. But for now, the focus is on Shi Tian and his top 8 here at Mythic Championship 5. Congratulations to Lee.
Wow.
Incredible.
I almost forgot about Mono Red, right? I mean, it's been such a dominant, popular deck for the last 2 years.
I can tell you that there's 67 other players in the field that also forgot about Mono Red, because he's the only one playing, and he is standing with Becca Scott right now.